Hi everyone, today as requested I'm going to do a demo about transitions. I think the trick to transitions is that a lot of it is just cutting between things, but using a match on action in motion to get from shot to shot, so mirroring what you're doing at the end of one shot at the beginning of another shot. This is what we're going to make. It is super easy, so let's get started. So I have already set up my project file with my folder structure and my colors, and using my proper naming convention in a 1920 by 1080 30 frames per second comp that's 15 seconds long. And then I just have my background color. It's not fully black, it's set to one of my colors in my palette. So once you have your comp set up, the first thing I'm going to do is make a shape layer of one of my colors, and it's going to be the full size of this composition. I need my anchor point in the center, so that's good. And then I'm going to make a text layer. Okay, your text layer can say whatever you want, but this is how I want mine to be. And then for my text layer, I want this anchor point to center into my text layer. And you can just like do it the normal way, using the pan behind tool and holding command, and that's fine. But the problem that I have with this is that, like, if I were to add another line, that anchor point is no longer in the center of my text layer. So to get it to stay always locked to the center, I am going to use an expression. It doesn't really matter for this project because I'm not going to be changing things that much, but I like to do this a lot because it makes like changing type inside of comps a lot easier. So I generally use this expression to lock my anchor points to my center. So to do that, I'm going to twirl down my text layer into my anchor point. I'm going to alt click on anchor point and write the following expression. So I'm going to create a bunch of variables first, and then I'll write my actual expression, and at a later demo I'll explain more in depth what these things mean, but for now you can just copy what I'm writing. So A equals this layer dot source rect at time, height equals A dot height, semicolon, width equals A dot width, top equals A dot top, and left equals A dot left. And then X equals left plus width divided by 2, and Y equals top plus height divided by 2. So these are just a bunch of different variables, and basically what it means is this expression here, source rect at time, is my favorite expression. I use it all the time, and it's basically how you call out height and width of a layer based on where it is in the timeline. So that's my first variable, and then I'm saying doing A dot height is this whole beginning of this code, but I'm calling out specifically the height of the layer, and then same thing, I'm calling out the width of the layer, the top of the layer, and the left of the layer. If I just take this expression and put it here in replace of A, that's all the same thing. I'm just shortening it to make it easier to type out. Down here I'm saying X equals, so we're in the anchor point, right? So we're saying the position of where the anchor point is in this layer. We're saying x equals the left divided by 2, or left plus width divided by 2, and y equals the top plus height divided by 2. And that's just saying taking the whole width of the layer and dividing it by 2, in the height of the layer and dividing it by 2 to get it to center into the middle. And now I'm just gonna like write my actual expression, which I'm just gonna do normal brackets and then x comma y. And there we go. Now this anchor point will stay in the center no matter what I do. So that's the expression. That's all I'm going to say about it now. I will definitely talk more about it at a later time. Okay, so now that all that is set up, now I'm just going to do some really simple animations. I'm going to use this shape layer that I made first, and I'm just going to animate the scale. I'm going to make sure I unhook these. And let's go 1 second in and make another keyframe, and then go back and make this one 0. So this is what we have happening. And now I want this to get masked on and off of my layer. So I'm going to use, like I could use a track mat, so I could just copy and paste this layer that's doing the same animation as the one before, put it above my text layer, and change this to an alpha mat. And so now it's just following that layer, but if I change the animation on this, that will get all messed up. So what I like to do is, instead of having a bunch of layers in my timeline, I'm going to use the set mat, which we have used before. And I'm just going to put it on my text layer and then set it to that shape layer 1. So now this is what I have, and that will mask on and off. And then just to make this a bit more interesting, I'm going to animate, oops, not that, animate the tracking of this letter, of this word. So it's just a bit more interesting. And then I'm going to ease these keyframes in and use 100% influence. Okay, so now what I want to happen is I want this orange solid to sort of like fall off the screen. So if we look back at my reference that I made before, it's just gonna fall off, and then a bunch of other layers are gonna come on and follow it. And so to do that, I could just parent this to here and then animate my position. But the problem with that is now my word is scaling, matching the scale keyframes that are on here already, which I don't want to happen. So I am going to unparent that, and I'm just going to pull up position. And I'm going to alt click, and I'm just going to use my pick whip to make it the same as the layer below. So now that word is just following the position of the other layer rather than parenting to the whole layer where it will follow all of my transform properties. Just to make this animation a bit more interesting even more, I'm just going to move my tracking amount 5 keyframes longer than what it was, so it hits that a little bit later and it's not going as the same time as the scale. And now I'm just going to ease out this keyframe here. So that's what we have now. And since it's off the screen at this point, just to keep my timeline clean, I'm going to just trim my layers, and I just used Alt and then closed bracket to move the layer to cut it to my playhead in my timeline. I'm gonna make this happen a bit faster too. So I'm gonna move this here, this here. Yeah, that feels better to me. Okay, and now I just want these colors to come falling in afterwards, and I'm gonna do that by making 3 more shape layers in various colors. And now I'm just going to animate the scale on all of them. Well, first I'm going to move my anchor points to the top of each layer, so when I scale it, it's going to scale from the anchor point at the top rather than in the middle. And I'm just going to match the same easing here for the scale. So on my first one, I'm going to hide these two so we can see. The first one, scale at the beginning, scale at 20 frames. And this is going to be 0. So now it's going to fall in like that. And I'm going to match my easing or else it's going to get messed up and not follow this layer exactly. So these easings need to be for the position and this easing for scale need to be exactly the same or else they won't line up. But it's easy because it's just 100% influence. Easy ease out. So now it should follow that exactly, yeah. And I'm going to do the same for these shape layers too. And I'm just going to trim these layers so they're the same size, or the right size I guess, as just their keyframes, and I'm going to offset them by 5 keyframes. So now this is what we have. So they're flashing black like that because I should have these go like this. My layers were cutting off too soon. There. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So from there, I'm gonna animate in my next word, and I'm just going to have it follow the same way that we did with the position on this layer and the position on this layer. I'm gonna do the same thing for this layer and my new text layer. I'm gonna have position, make a keyframe here, make a keyframe here. At the beginning, have it all the way out of frame. And then I'm gonna go into position. And I'm going to ease out. Trim my layer and move it 5 frames ahead. So now this is what we have. So actually this easing is wrong, and I'm gonna ease in just so it doesn't hit as hard as it comes down. And I'm gonna move it a little bit further back in my timeline. Yeah, about there. There, that looks much better. Okay, next what we're gonna do is just another simple swipe. So after this falls into place, I'm gonna have another shape layer. I'm gonna start naming these just because it's going to get confusing because there's a lot of shape layers. I'm gonna copy and paste this and move it to where I want it to be in the timeline, and I'm just gonna get rid of my keyframes, and I'm gonna move my anchor point to the left. And now I'm just gonna do another scale, but I'm gonna do it coming from the left, so it'll be like this, you know, 0 at on the y-axis to 100. And I'm gonna ease in. Actually, I'm gonna easy ease both of these keyframes. And make my influence 85%. Okay, so that's what we have happening. And right now it's just swiping off that word, and I'm just gonna have another layer right on top of it. I'm gonna get rid of my position animation, and I'm gonna move it to when the green starts sliding on, and I'm gonna change it to a different color. So now that will swipe. But I'm going to use a set mat again. And have it go with green 2. So now when green 2 comes on, it'll swipe on that black word. And as it swipes on, I want this word to scale up. Just, you know, I know this isn't a type animation, but I don't want it to be too boring. Oops, I'm gonna make my anchor point in the center of my word too. So there is a plugin, because like obviously typing that is a lot of work every single time, and there is a plugin that I really like. It's just called, I'll link to it in the Google Doc, but it basically you can just add your favorite expressions and it will save them in here. So I have this expression saved in here, and then you can just copy and paste it, and then it'll just do exactly what you need it to without having to type it every single time. Okay, so now I'm going to animate my scale. And I'm going to use the same easy ease. And I'm going to end this layer when this transition ends, so it's hidden. And same thing with this layer. Cool. So next I am going to make another shape layer. Well, first I'm going to draw some guides on my composition just to use them for when I draw my next shape layer. I'm gonna do just some in the middle and then some on the edges. So now I'm gonna draw a new shape layer. I'm just gonna use this blue color. My cat is right in front of me walking across my keyboard. Get out of here, cat. And in the same shape layer, I'm going to make sure I draw both of these because I'm going to use it as a mat at a different time, and I just want to make sure it's all in the same one. So I have just like one solid blue now, but there's two shapes within it. There's a top part and a bottom part, and I'm just going to animate these in an offset so they move in from opposite sides but land in the same spot. And I'm going to adjust my easing to be easy ease with 85% on each side. So now I'm just gonna cut these layers off once they meet in the middle because I don't need to see them anymore. And I'm going to make a new text layer. And I'm going to use set matte on this text layer so it masks it. Now again, just so my type isn't too boring, I'm just going to do a little bit of an animation on it. I'm going to solo the layer so I can see what I'm doing. Oops. And I'm going to hide the effect, so now I can just focus on the type. I'm going to animate position, make sure my anchor point and my text is left aligned, and I'm going to have the type fall into place a little bit after my shape layer does. Easy ease in with 100% influence. And then I'm going to animate my tracking too. I'm going to unsolo my layer and make sure I re-enable my effect so the track matte will work. Cool, yeah, that looks good. So next I want this to scale out and go into a bigger grid. So I'm going to do that by creating a new null object and centering it to the middle of my composition, and I'm going to rename it scale, and I'm going to parent the blue shape layer to scale, and then I'm going to parent not also to my blue shape layer. So not is parented to blue, blue is parented to scale. Now I'm going to make two keyframes at a second apart, and it's going to go from 100 to 50. I'm going to easy ease these keyframes, the same that we have been doing with the 85% influence. Cool, and you can see there's like a weird, like, these dumb shape layers aren't totally connecting, so I'm just gonna like add a tiny little stroke around them with the same color, just like a 1 pixel stroke, and that should get rid of it. Let's do 2 pixels. There. Cool. So now that we've scaled down, so now I'm going to make a grid of other shape layers, and I'm just going to pick whatever colors I want. Double click so they're the same size as my comp and scale them by 50. And I'm going to zoom in because I'm just going to want some guides to place these. Position them to where I want them to be. So this is going to take a bit of setting up to do again. I want to parent the ones in the middle row here to this shape layer that I already have. So this orange one will be parented to blue 2, and then I'm going to make another color. Move to the other side and parent it to blue 2. So now when I move this layer, these ones in the middle will follow this shape layer. And then the rest are just going to be parented to my null, my scale null. Okay, and just so I don't get confused, I'm going to name these a bit differently than just like the numbers. So this one is going to be 1A, 1B, 1C. And this one's going to be left. This one's going to be right. 3A, 3B, 3C. So now I have a better understanding of like where things are in this grid. So left and right are parented to the blue shape layer that I have swiping on here. And then all of the other ones, 1A, B, and C, and 3A, B, and C are parented to scale. So now since they're parented to there, and I already have this animation scaling back, all of those layers will follow it. And now I'm just going to change the colors so it's not all the same.
He's a gentle one. He's a gentle one.
Okay, cool. So now I just have this grid scaling back. And I parented everything the way that I wanted it to, so once it scales back, I can just animate this blue shape layer position. I'm going to do plus 1920, sorry, minus 1920. And then one more time. And actually one more time. And I'm going to copy and paste these layers again. And this one's going to be 2A. B, and 2C, and at the end of my animation I'm going to just parent these to my blue shape layer. So now when it moves, it'll follow. And I'm going to adjust my easing so it's the same easy ease with 85% influence. And now I'm going to animate my scale. Back up to 100. And make sure my easing influence is right. And now I am just going to create a new text layer. And parent it to my 2B shape layer. So that's the one that's this white shape layer here. Okay, so now from here, I'm just going to have this text layer. I'm going to animate the position so it goes off to the left. And I'm going to easy ease out. Cool. And I'm just going to cut these layers off right here. And from here, I'm going to make a new background color. And it's going to come on right when that other layer cuts off. And I'm just gonna type one big and this H is, I'm going to do a match on action to animate this H in. So this one's going off to the left. So this H is going to come in from the right. And my easing is going to be opposite. So I'm going to do position, 15 frames forward. And this is easing out on this left keyframe. So this is going to ease in on the right keyframe. So it's just following that move, and I'm actually going to cut off this layer. I'm going to move the keyframe so it doesn't go all the way to the end. So now it's just cutting off right before it finishes the move, and it just, I don't know, I think it looks better that way. Cool. And now from here, I'm just going to animate my scale. Another 15 frames forward. We're gonna go from 100 to, let's say, oh, my keyframe, my pesky anchor point, I need it to be in the center of my word, which is gonna mess up my position. So I'm going to have to reanimate this, but luckily it's not that bad. So I'm gonna get rid of my keyframes, move my anchor point to the center, and then just redo that position. And then 15 frames forward. I'm gonna make it 500. So now it's scaling from the center. And make sure I ease, so this is gonna be an ease in. And this is going to be an ease out. I'm gonna cut my layers and move that one off. Okay, so this is what we have. And now from here, I'm just gonna copy and paste these layers. And to get rid of this first position animation because I don't need it. And I'm gonna change the scale. So the scale is gonna be, it's gonna start from 0 and it's gonna go to 100 and then it's gonna go to 500. And I'm gonna easy ease it. So now it's gonna ease on both sides rather than just one side. And I'm gonna change my background color. And I'm gonna change my letter. So actually, this looks weird. So what I'm gonna do instead is, instead of scaling up, I'm gonna have it scale back. So it's gonna go from 100 to 0. And then it's gonna start from 200 to 100 to 0. I'm gonna copy and paste one more time. Change the color of my background. Make sure you move that keyframe off because I don't know, I think a little tiny bit helps. Just makes it feel smoother to me. I don't know why. And then for my last one, I'm just gonna copy and paste one more time. And then just get rid of this last keyframe here. So it just pauses for a minute. And then I am going to have this shape layer like we did in the beginning. I'm gonna unhook these and I'm gonna scale it. to 0. And put a set mat on my D. And make sure I ease. I'm gonna do an ease out 100% influence. Cool. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna move this in my timeline a bit just because I want a few frames of black before my loop starts. I'm gonna move it 15 frames forward. And that gives me 15 frames in the end here. Let's make it 14 seconds. It's a little bit more, but whatever. So now when I hit play, this is what we have. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I admittedly am not great at transitions. I think a lot of it has to do with whatever you're actually animating, so they change based on project to project. But what I heavily rely on is mostly just, like I said before, cutting in between things and using a match on action from shot to shot. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.